Right, that's the welcome back, America. 28 minutes before the top of the hour. I am Bill Martinez. Al Johnson is with us right now. Al has had quite the storied career. Served 12 years in the U.S. Army EOD. That would be the Explosive Ordnance Disposal. Okay, we're talking bombs here, where he deployed twice in the Middle East, commanding various task force and an EOD company himself. He later conducted multiple engagements in Southeast Asia, focusing on the IED threats there. He developed Raven's Challenge for the public in 2007 after 3 years of developing a similar program for the National Guard. Al Johnson, first of all, let me say we are so grateful for your service. We thank you for all that you have done on behalf of we the people in defending life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Well, thank you, Bill. It's actually good to be an American where you can have the privilege of being able to do those sorts of things. So it's all part of it.
It really is an honor, isn't it, to be able to do that? I mean, when you think about other companies, other countries, I should say, by comparison, you volunteered, you weren't compelled, but for duty and your own sense of honor and duty to this country, you made the decision, the choice to serve.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, we actually joined up just after 9/11. So it was the entire career was basically focused as the IED threat grew. The EOD field that we were in with the military had to grow with it.
Okay, so let me ask you. You tell your parents, "Hey, I'm enlisting in the Army," and then you say, "Hey, I'm going to go deal with bombs, explosives, and the disposal of such." You know, those things we see on TV once in a while, where you see people go and disarm these bombs, and you tell your family this is going to be your military occupation, and they say, "What?"
Well, my father was a 32-year veteran himself. He was a paratrooper, so he took the news in stride. But I didn't tell my mom until after I finished most of my training what exactly I was doing.
Yeah, so your dad says, "Why couldn't you be like me and just jump out of a perfectly, well operating airplane and and put on a parachute and hope that everything opens up?" But no, you got to go play with bombs, right?
Exactly. Sometimes we tried to compare which was more dangerous.
Right, exactly. Well, let's talk about Raven's Challenge. How did this come about?
It came about initially because we saw that there was a need for taking the lessons learned from combating IEDs overseas and bringing it initially back to hometown USA. So we saw that there was a gap in what the threat was overseas and then the capability to detect and deter that threat back at home. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the initial genesis of it. And then it grew over time to encompass things such as interoperability between police, military, and private organizations to be able to work together to combat the threat. Because a lot of the opposing groups that were making the bombs and putting them out there, they could work and do as they pleased. They had no jurisdictional restrictions between them. They had no legal boundaries. Right. But in the U.S. and now we found overseas, a lot of the governments and communities have these artificial restrictions placed between them for legal matters, jurisdictional matters, or just funding matters. So what we try to do is get everybody to work together toward the common problem. We all had the problem with IEDs, but how do we work together to combat that? And knowing what their actual knowledge was overseas, bringing it home to someone who's never seen a bomb, that was the primary driving focus.
Well, I want to get into the significance of why Raven's Challenge, but you touched on something that came to mind immediately. I think it's quite ironic that here you are, and I say maybe not only you, but others, and in this country, we are a country of laws. We have to abide by laws, but then you have people who come in to do evil, and there's no law for them, and they just get to run they get to use the laws as interference to protect their evil deed. There's just something wrong here that we need to reconcile, don't you think?
Exactly, and it just means that from our side, when you're fighting groups that are essentially lawless, and then will use your need to be able to work within the law, that you have to become very clever, and so you have to fight that much harder in order to be able to overcome what they have their advantages of.
Yeah, but what that exposes you to in terms of rules of engagement that you potentially, here you are, you're doing what you can to protect and serve and perform your function. And you got these guys that rule schmills. It doesn't matter. I mean, we've had cases, border agents, for example, who have gotten themselves in a lot of trouble. They end up in jail protecting the country, and who did they go after but a well-known person that was he was a drug runner. He was already convicted of a felony, but because they violated the rules of engagement, they end up in jail. And this guy gets some big scot-free bunch of money from us, we the people, for being shot.
Mm-hmm. But like I said, it makes it very difficult, but it makes the need to work that much harder, a lot double. So it's up to the governments as far as tailoring the laws or being able to do the laws so that you can do your job efficiently. Sometimes it's just breaking down the regulations that are in place between two organizations and a government not talking to each other, as we had with 9/11.
Exactly.
So some of those are in place, and it's and that's kind of what Ravens Challenge does. Is it presents very realistic training over a week long. Now it's a 2-week process, and so that the government officials can come in, look at it, and they get firsthand from the operators in the field, like those border agents, like the EOD techs and the police department on the street. They get direct feedback about the problems they have. They see the challenges they have, and then how can they best facilitate going after the bad guys. And so sometimes this helps them to see the light, so to speak. Okay.
Now my other question I had for you, Al, and that is the significance of Ravens Challenge. Why Ravens Challenge? Why the name?
Well, the name had a long and storied history. So it kind of started out in Washington State, and the state bird was the raven, as was Washington's family's crest was the raven. Mm-hmm. And then by coincidence, when our first deployment came through, by chance, I was using a drone back in 2004 that was attached to us, and it was called the Raven. Oh, okay. And so we kind of called it the Ravens Challenge. So it's the raven being a tricky bird in many different groups. That's a very, very clever bird. So EOD has to be very clever in how we approach problems and things of that nature. So it seemed a very good fit. And then when I created the company after I got out of the military, we called it, it was initially Raven Group International. So the name was there, and we just kept it for the challenge.
Well, great. Now, where is Raven Challenge hosted and held?
It started, like you said, initially in Washington State, and it was Ravens Crescent there, and then it grew and over time. Right now, the largest single EOD counter ID event is actually over here in Thailand. It's where I'm actually calling from right now. And it's basically Thailand had a huge counter IED problem that started about 2003, about the time we started having problems in Iraq. April for Iraq, October for Thailand. And so it naturally draws in not just the Thai EOD, but the regional EOD from Southeast Asia and, of course, global. The United States is very involved. The United Kingdom is very involved. And everyone coming together over here to be able to do that. So it's a global program, but the largest being held in Thailand.
Well, Al, I'll tell you, we didn't hear a whole lot about IEDs. I mean, there was some form of it in Vietnam, but the terrorists have really gone wild. And as you mentioned, this has become viral. They've put out manuals out over the internet, and now it is quite profuse. So, what do you see for the future scenarios of IEDs?
Oof. Well, the future is really only in the imagination of the bad guy.
Right.
So whatever they can come up with and imagine and dream, they can do it. But the other part of that is that, like I said, 20 years ago, we didn't see too much of it. There was booby traps in Vietnam, but it didn't take over as much of the public's attention, or didn't have the capacity it does now. Right. The reason being because every time there's a new advance in technology, such as the toy that beeps when you walk into a room, your phone that can tell with GPS exactly where you are and signal another device. So as technology becomes even cheaper, more capable, and available to more people, that combined with this information that everybody gets off of the internet about how to utilize these things in a bad way, and that's what makes the IED threat so lethal today and over the last few years.
Al, 10 seconds left. Where can they go for more information?
www.ravenschallenge.org.
Al Johnson, I'm Bill Martinez. Thank you, Alan. Be safe out there, would you?